What's good YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Lars and Conditioning. Today we will talk about cluster sets, what they are and how you can use them. This is a method that is not that well known, but it's a very good method that you can use so you can spark new growth in your training. Quick explanation of what cluster sets are. A cluster set is a set that you take and divide up to 3 mini sets with some rest in between. So the way that you perform it, you perform your mini set, rest, mini set, rest, and then your full rest before you perform a full new cluster set. The amount of reps and the rest that you do very much depends on the exercise that you're using and the rep scheme that you're going to use. We're going to get into some examples of cluster sets, how you use them, and why you should use them in that manner. Firstly, how long should you rest between each mini set? This depends on the exercise. If you're doing a compound movement, no less than 20 seconds. If you're doing an isolation movement, you can use 10 seconds as the bare minimum. All the way up to 45 seconds on a compound movement, 25, maybe 30 seconds if you want to push it on an isolation movement, but no more than this. Alright, so how do you get started with doing cluster sets? Just take a weight that you can normally do for 10 repetitions and then split it up. What you want to do is that you do 5 reps, then rest, 5 reps, then rest, and 5 reps again, and then you rest your full 2 to 3 minutes before you perform a new cluster set. So you need to make sure that it's actually a weight that you can do well on 10 reps before you actually jump into this. So the amount of rest that you need, this will solely depend on if it's a compound or isolation movement. I would, for starters, recommend that you start with an isolation movement in the first time you do it, because this is a lot easier to gauge how difficult it actually gets to feel. So you can start with 15 seconds on an isolation movement and then see how it feels, and then over time you can progress to using it on compound movements, because it's going to be a lot harder on a compound movement. What if you're training more strength focused rather than hypertrophy? Well, if you are more focused on strength rather than pure size, then what you would do is that you're going to do fewer reps but more rest times. So what you will be doing, it could potentially be at 2-2-1 or 2-1-1. Basically that means 2 reps, 1 rep, or 2-1-1. This is the way that you can do it. You would also rest a lot longer, somewhere between 30 to 45 seconds on a compound movement, just because it's going to be a lot more taxing. So if you take a weight that you can normally do for 3 repetitions and you make it at 2-1-1, you're going to end up with roughly 33% increase in your total volume from just a single set. So this is going to tax you a lot more than you are accustomed to. So you also should start with 1, maybe just 2 cluster sets, and not do like 3 or 4 cluster sets on a compound movement the first time you do it, because it's going to tax you like something you have never experienced before. If you use a cluster set well, then you will get more exposure to good, clean, explosive reps. This is particularly important for strength, because when you're training for strength, we want your CNS to be as active and as powerful as possible. So the more you get good, clean, explosive reps, that teaches your CNS how to recruit and how well your body should move. So this is one thing that makes it so powerful to do cluster sets rather than doing regular sets, because you get many more reps with more time under tension, and you also get more clean reps. Cluster sets can be used on all movements. The only thing is that you need to be mindful of, if you're going to use a heavy cluster set modality, then you should be using it on compound movements and not isolation movements, or movements where you only have one joint that is in a movement. You need to have multiple joints that is involved in the motion. This is the best way to use it, and ensure you also do not potentially get injuries. My personal recommendations on the movement that you should use them on. I would personally recommend that you use it solely on compound movements, because compound movements can be the ones where you tend to get more stuck versus isolation movement. Isolation movements, we have other training methods that we can use to help drive up the volume, so we can create that more size. When it comes to strength, especially on compound movements, doing different things can really help cranking up the strength. Cluster sets is one of the methods that you can use, because like I said before, you get more exposure to more good, clean, explosive reps, at least if you do it correctly. In terms of the full rest time in between each full cluster set, when we're talking about compound movements, I recommend 3 to 5 minutes. Closer to 5 minutes if you're more focused on strength, 3 minutes if it's more size related. So somewhere in this range. If we're talking isolation movements, 1.5 to 3 minutes around that area. Potentially, you can just do 2 minutes. This could potentially be better because otherwise you may end up wasting a little too much time resting and slacking. Because isolation movement, again, you don't really need to do all that much rest when we're talking isolation movements, even with cluster sets. If you want any other training recommendations just like these, comment and subscribe. Lars in Conditioning, signing out. I hope you have an awesome day.